I will call the meeting to order, the council meeting to order, and we need a motion to excuse Councillor Unruh. Kelly so moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The minutes of September 9th have been circulated, and so we need a motion for adoption of those minutes or a motion for amendments as required. Tracy?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Call for post-agenda items. Are there any post-agenda items today? Okay, seeing none. Could we go to item 5 and move the adoption of the agenda, please? Anne Marie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And that takes us to item 6, the question period or notice of motion. And I will ask Todd if there's anyone online with a question. I don't see he has anything in the chat line, chat box.
Good morning, Molly. We have 13 people viewing our live stream today, but we do not have any questions so far. So if there's anything that comes up, I'll make sure to interject rudely and ask them at that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. So in the meantime, we will carry on. Moving to item 7, our bylaws, and the first one is road closure and lease, and this is for second and third reading, and we'll pass it over to Maria.
Madam Reeve, this is again second and third reading for road closure bylaw 2015-21. The subject property is subject road allowance, is in Division 6, approximately 13 kilometers southeast of the town of Bizano. All parcels on both sides of this road allowance are in the agriculture land use district, and the applicant owns all the parcels adjacent to the proposed road allowance closure. Access to the surrounding land should not be affected by this road closure, as there is an access easement registered on title to allow access from some of the adjacent parcels. This bylaw received first reading on June 24th. It went through public hearing on July 8th, and it received Alberta Transportation approval on September 9th. Administration is recommending that second and third reading of this bylaw be given to the bylaw 2015-21 to close the road allowance and lease portions of that road. Thanks.
Questions from anyone? I think we're all fairly familiar with what's going on in this particular bylaw for road closure and lease. So seeing no questions, Clarence?
I'll move second reading.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third reading, Lionel moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, that takes us to item 7.2 and our land use bylaw for possible second and third readings. And once again, I will ask Maria to give us a refresher on an update on what's gone on since our last meeting on the land use bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Reeve. So this is for the County of Newell Draft Land Use Bylaw 2016-21. A public hearing was held on Thursday, September 9th. Since then, there was an IDP meeting held with the City of Brooks and county members. Sorry, pardon me. There was an IDP meeting with the city, and the city's remaining concerns were heard at that time, and that included large agriculture and accessory buildings within the IDP plan boundary of the city. There was concern about utilities being a permitted use, and there was concerns with large-scale solar and pits and quarries being a use in the IDP area. I think that we had really good discussion with the city, and we have made some changes to the land use bylaw that is being presented today to reflect those concerns. In the agricultural general district, we have included a section called exceptions. And in that section, we have moved agriculture and accessory buildings that are greater than 300 square meters, which is about 3,200 square feet, to a discretionary use within the IDP areas of our municipal neighbors. We've also moved utilities to a discretionary use in these areas. And there is also a policy included in that section that pits and quarries should not be located within the IDP plan areas of our urban municipal neighbors. We also had a discussion regarding solar and that the decision for large-scale solar happens at the AUC level. And Brooks was in agreement that we would work together to protect the developable areas within the IDP area when applications are presented to the AUC. And we'll also work together to update our IDP to include the policies in our intermunicipal development plan. Administration also had the opportunity to have a discussion with the Village of Duchess, their CAO and contract planner. They presented the county administration with a land use district that their planner had drafted, and they asked that it be included in the county land use bylaw. So that land use district was included in your agenda packages. The land use district title was Agriculture Intermunicipal Plan Area. The county administration was not involved in the creation of this land use district, nor did we have the chance to make suggestions for edits. It was agreed at that meeting that we had yesterday when we were presented with this district that this land use district would be presented to council for their consideration. Having quickly reviewed this, the land use district is stricter than the current fringe district is, with both accessory buildings and agricultural buildings being a discretionary use. All sign categories in our current land use bylaw are permitted, while Duchess is now proposing that they be discretionary. Another change is that solar was removed from the district altogether. And once we started discussing that at the meeting, the planner from the village did say that there was an error in that land use district, as Duchess was okay with personal solar installations being exempt from a permit. They also understood that the large-scale solar decisions are made at the AUC level. This proposed land use district also includes subdivision policy created by the Village of Duchess. As county knows, that administration would like to include all subdivision policy within the subdivision bylaw. Our county administration feels that we have listened to our neighboring municipalities' concerns and have addressed them to the best of our ability. the land use bylaw presented today controls and directs development to appropriate areas of the county. It works to reduce red tape, encourage economic growth while protecting adjacent landowners and affected parties. And administration would recommend the second and third reading to be given to Land Use Bylaw 2016-21. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Maria. Clarence.
So the package that we got two days ago doesn't have that in it, or does have it in it?
It is the land use district that was provided by the Village of Duchess was not included in the draft land use bylaw that is being recommended by county administration. It is, council is able to direct staff to include that policy if they would like. So we could table a decision, we could do up another draft and present it again if that's the direction council would feel appropriate.
Maria, on that note, is there not a great opportunity to include any of those concerns when we start working with the interdevelopment municipal plans? Like, isn't that where we're trying to take things like this?
Yes, these are policies that we would like to include in the IDP. I believe Duchess is of the opinion that this be included in the land use bylaw and then can be removed at the time the IDP is created or updated, pardon me. County administration does feel that we have protected the fringe areas with the updates that we have provided today.
Thank you. Wayne and Mark and Kelly.
Maria, when exactly did the municipality of Duchess know that we were changing and that we were looking for their input into this bylaw? What date exactly? Because they didn't get back to us till 2 days ago.
Sorry, I'm just going to pull up that information. I do have it right here, and I thought I had it up. So the process of the land use bylaw started in December with the steering committee, and then it was presented to council for first reading on August 5th. So prior to that, we did have a public open house and we did circulate the draft document. That public open house was open from June 9th to the 21st, I believe. It was in June, but first reading wasn't held until August 5th. So Duchess is saying that they've only had 3 months to consider the document with the fringe district removed.
Thank you.
Mark?
Long, did you get your answer?
Yeah, I'm good.
No, for Councillor Amulung, did he get his answer? Your microphone's not on, Clarence.
Like, I'd like to see what we're actually proposing to just, you know, I thought everything was there. It's not there. We haven't read it. We haven't seen it. I feel a little uncomfortable passing it at this moment. When I read through it, I thought this is what was always there before, and that's fine. But now we've got something new in there. You know, I just think we should be seeing that type of stuff before we pass it.
Okay, so if I may, I believe you asked what Duchess was requesting to be added to. That was circulated in yesterday's amendment to the agenda. So it wasn't from 2 days ago, it was in yesterday's amendment to the agenda.
Okay. Okay, I guess I've missed it.
Kelly?
You're all muted.
Yeah, thanks. So my comment or questions are around the process here with the Village of Duchess. So our administration, we reached out to Duchess after our last council meeting. And is it a fact that they waited until the day before our council meeting to meet with you? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. We had our meeting yesterday, and that information, that land use district was presented to us yesterday morning.
So was that delay because our administration was too busy, or was that delay where was the delay here, Maria? Can you put some clarity there?
County administration gave available dates, and this was the date that worked for the village administration.
Okay, so then we get the information 12 hours, 14 hours before the council meeting. Thank you for that, Maria.
Anne-Marie?
And I appreciate the feedback from all the municipalities. Ultimately, though, it's our land use bylaw, and we have to work with it. It's a fluid document. Staff keeps track of changes, of what needs to be changed in the future, and I feel confident with the bylaw the way it's been presented. And yes, Duchess made a suggestion for another land use district, but I think we've got it covered the way it is. And this new one that they presented, well, let's make a note. If we ever make changes, maybe we can have a discussion on it.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Brian?
Absolutely agree with everything that's been said here. I would be much more in favor of adopting or have second and third reading for the land use bylaw that was circulated. The problem that I see if we would look at these changes or consider them is we haven't done our public hearing due justice. We would have to go back to public hearing because these are changes that adding a new land use district would actually, I think, trigger another land use bylaw. And I don't think it's necessary because of everything that Maria's laid out and Mark and Jeff prior to this. So I would like to move ahead with this with the as presented, as suggested by our great staff. So if you need a motion, Madam Reeve, I'd be happy to make second reading.
Thank you, Brian. So Brian moves second reading. And I also agree with what has been said. There is nothing in here that cannot be talked about at the intermunicipal plan meetings. And we need to get on with those. And so it's not, I appreciate their concerns, but I think they can be addressed. And you know, perhaps it's unfortunate that some of this happened over the summer, but life carries on, work carries on. And I think we have given people opportunity to give their input, and we can't control what other municipalities do with their meetings or with their time. But, and I feel that our timelines have been okay. And as I said, earlier, there's nothing that cannot be looked at when the council committees get together going forward. Any other comments? All in favor of second reading? Opposed? Motion is carried. And so we need a motion for third reading. Kelly moves third reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And certainly going forward, if the time processes are an issue, then again, let's have a look at those things at the committee meetings for the intermunicipal plans. So that takes us to Ag Service Business with Mr. Green, who is also our moderator today.
You're in. Should we start with the Fieldman report?
Sounds like a good place to start.
Perfect. We talk a lot, so some of this stuff might be a repeat, but it's always great to have it formally in the minutes. So roadside mowing is near done. We have that crew is back to 8-hour days, just as they kind of tidy up some of the areas, mostly just the weeds that are growing along the sides of the road, as well as any of our double pass kind of high traffic roads to try to keep the snow off in the wintertime. We did complete our grasshopper surveys, the bacterial ring rot, Fusarium graminearum, and 2 different club root surveys. Populations of grasshoppers were not alarming, still very manageable, but hopefully we don't have a warm, dry spring next year so they get out of control. ERR fields, we didn't have any signs of disease, and we didn't note any Fusarium or clubroot during the survey this season. Our rentals, I think we had a pretty decent year. You can definitely tell it's dry when you look at the drill rental numbers. I mean, our no-till drills were at 2625, but that's 1,000 acres less than last year. And that being said, I mean, late season, we had 500 acres of grass be seeded last year by one renter with our no-till. So just little less optimism this year for germinating some of those areas. And the rest of the stuff is kind of about normal. When you get down to the barbecue rentals, I mean, we had 5 rentals this year, which was phenomenal. That's 3 more than 2020. So we really doubled our production. But in relation that we used to have about 45 different uses for that barbecue, you know, pre-COVID. So hopefully we can get back to everybody enjoying life together. We did have a great inspection season for weeds, but arguably a little bit harder of a control season. Lots of our weed sites, some of our contract spray sites, we did have to make some return trips to get the effective control we wanted. I think a little bit on the heat, a little bit on the timing. And we just kind of felt like we were behind for much of July and August. And I think everything just kind of started to mature a little bit faster than we could get after. So it wasn't perfect, but all in all, I think we staved off many sites from becoming problematic, and we were able to control all of our prohibited noxious weed sites, which is very important. The Riverwalk went really good. We continue to see a decline in chamomile populations, and mostly I think we're kind of targeting some of the other ones right now. Common tansy has been exploding down there. We've only been kind of taking care of common tansy down there for probably a handful of years. So once we get a handle on that, we'll be sure to keep you apprised. Man, Emerson Bridge, we're breaking records at Emerson Bridge this year for sure. I can't remember the exact number, but we crested the 6-figure mark for revenue this season, and that's the first time we've ever done that. So people tend to enjoy it. I did have a chance to talk to Chris before she left earlier this week, and she said that our during the week rentals were up quite significantly this year, which is phenomenal. We're not just a weekend campsite, so happy to have people there all the time. We do continue to monitor Phragmites. I know that it's been a conversation a few times in the council chambers, and we're happy to note that we do not have any growing this year, so that's good. Technically, we did not have a TD Tree Days event this season, and by that I just kind of mean that you know, the TD Bank volunteers were not able to come and help us, but TD did give us a grant for $2,500, and we partnered with Brooks Fish and Game, and we were able to plant 220 trees out at their Long Pump property on September 18th, largely due to Brian's shovel work, which was phenomenal. You can definitely tell he's dug a few holes in his day. Yeah, I think our partnerships continue to be a feather in our cap at Ag Services. Managing weeds and pests, it's something we take great pride in. Whether it's gophers for grasslands or weed inspecting and control, I think our crew does an amazing job. And we did complete all our seasonal contracts, and we're already starting to plan for next year's programs. We do not have strychnine anymore, so we're contemplating trying to host some sort of farmer pesticide certificate training. It's not a difficult process to plan. We just don't know what we're going to be allowed to do, whether it's kind of in person or try to do something virtual. And just, you know, farm pesticide certificate allows people to get phostoxin, which is a fumigation product that you can use for ground squirrel control or fumigating your grain bins. So just one of those things we're trying. We just don't exactly know or where and when we can. And then, you know, I think we talked about this briefly last meeting, but the trappers course that Joe has set up for next weekend in Emerson, she got completely filled up. We're quite pumped about that. So as soon as we're out of there, we're going to be winterizing Emerson for the season. And then, of course, with winter coming, we also got all our sprayer systems and irrigation systems getting ready for that as well. And yeah, I think after that, winter's coming, and once harvest is complete, hopefully we can help some more guys get through the EFP process and make them available to get some CAP funding opportunities. And yeah, that's about it. If you know of anybody that needs an EFP, make sure you let them know to give us a call.
Thanks, Todd. Questions from Lionel and Brian?
I'm not a camper, so I don't frequent Emerson very often, but I was there on the weekend. I just want to commemorate you on how well you've taken care of it, and I checked out the shower and the bathrooms, and they're incredible and very clean, very neat, and that was really amazing. The whole campsites looks excellent. So good job, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Lionel. I wish I could take more credit for it. I don't spend a lot of time down there either, but we have a very dedicated crew, and they take great pride in everything they do. And Emerson, certainly since 2008, has been a crown jewel for us. And I think it's a, what do they call that? A diamond in the rough, or something that not enough people know about, for sure.
Brian?
Thanks, Todd. I wanted to pass along a bouquet from one of my neighbors that did the environmental farm plan with you, and he was very complimentary to the process and how well you helped him out with it. So as far as the hole digging thing, well, I had a pretty good assistant. Todd's young son there, Jackson, he was my helper. And till he decided to abandon me and go help somebody else, but it was a lot of fun. Actually, it was a lot of fun. So thanks for having us, and thanks for coordinating that for Fish and Game. I know they really appreciated it.
Absolutely, and that's just another great way for people to understand the work of the County of Newell and the great people we have doing that work. Any other questions? Tracy?
I was just curious where the Long Pump property is. I've never heard of that. I'm not associated with that organization, but I was curious.
If I may, it's about 2 miles south of where I live. So where the Brooks Airport is, there's a natural reserve that's about, I don't know, what did you say, half a mile north of there, Todd? And it extends up to Range Road, almost to Range Road 200, and I'm not even sure how many acres it is. And it's there's lots of native grass, and you can always find pheasants and coyotes and all sorts of stuff there. But it's on the very north side of that they planted. And maybe talk a little bit, Todd, about the different type of trees. I know you had choke cherries and elderberries and Saskatoons, and what were some of the other varieties?
Yeah, you kind of hit most of them, Brian. The TD guys, they love it when we plant native trees. So we did, yeah, we used some Saskatoons, some choke cherries, some prickly rose. There was a maple tree that I wouldn't be confident that it would be considered native, but we had a little bit of difficulty finding the exact species that we wanted. And then, yeah, the red elderberry was the other one. There was only 5 different varieties, and I think that was all of them. So it's kind of neat. Yeah, certainly be a lot of food source for the birds and the berries, and I'm assuming in 5 or so years we'll be able to go and collect some Saskatoons for jam and pie and all that kind of good jazz. And I do apologize for Jackson talking your ear off, Brian. Your ears are probably sorer than your back from digging holes. So.
It was quite delightful. I do have a question. Do you ever have trouble keeping those young plants alive with the number of deer? Because there's quite a few. I know there's at least one herd of deer in there, and they seem to love the bark off of those young trees. Have you run into that before, where they tend to clean it off in a hard winter or something, or not?
Yeah, deer and oftentimes rabbits and porcupines, they wreak havoc on young saplings. And I mean, we can even note it at the Kinsman grounds up here on that great project they did there. But that's kind of part of why the trees are there, is for, habitat. So they might take a little bit longer to establish. Once you get that root system going, it seems they can weather the storm for some of the wildlife eating them. They kind of get chewed down by the deer, and then they kind of grow up even kind of bushier or whatever. The tough one is the rabbits that kind of girdle along the bark of the bottom of the tree, and that kills the tree. But it sounded like Lester had a good plan. He was the main organizer out there for keeping everything going, certainly giving them the best chance they can. So, but yeah, deer are certainly very hard on trees.
All right, thanks, Todd. I think there's no more questions, so we'll take a motion to accept the ag report. Moved by Hubie. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And we'll move on to the South Region Ag Service Board Conference, planned for October the 6th.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, a similar conference. We do it every year. Kind of one of the ideas behind the South Region Conference is to learn a little bit about the different areas we get to go into. We have, I believe, 19 South Region municipalities, and the conference kind of goes around to each municipality in rotation. So usually we learn a little bit about the area or the history of that municipality, a little bit about what goes on there, and then we kind of learn whatever it is based on their theme. So when I was talking to the fellas from Cardston County, they mentioned their theme was, kind of pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And I think it's going to be a great little conference. They're hoping to do it live still. I kind of sent you guys a quick email about their plan for still doing it live. And yeah, usually also at this time of year, we'll do resolutions. Unfortunately, their timeline for the conference is October 6th, and we won't get a chance, because October 7th is our next council meeting. We won't get a chance to talk about those resolutions together in a formal setting prior to going. So I understand there's 2 resolutions. And I haven't seen them yet. I do apologize. I don't even know what they're for.
Questions about the conference? I thought it was interesting and great that they made a decision to try and do it in person. There's not much happening in person again. And so, yeah. So is there a registration deadline on that, Todd?
That was a really good question. Yes, September 29th.
So do people know today if they're thinking of attending? Brian, Kelly? Brian and Kelly, for sure?
Well, I wouldn't say for sure, based on the fact that, I don't know what their protocol is going to be. I'm assuming you need a passport or some proof of a test that's a negative test. But considering all those, I mean, I would qualify to go and I would like to go. But, if everything goes well, I would like to attend.
Yeah. Wayne also. Clarence?
Well, that's, Brian touched on it. That's exactly I'd love to go, but I want to make sure protocol is being served and if not, I'm not interested.
It would appear that they are putting into place the protocols from what the information they sent. So, as I said, it's sort of interesting because that's the first time that we've had anyone do that. And it's a choice we're making rather than going.
I'll go.
I got Clarence, Wayne, Amory, Brian, Kelly, Molly, Hubie. So that the 29th is next week, so if anything changes, we'll let Todd know.
Wonderful. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, Todd. And, wow, this is amazing. The closest time we've ever had on an agenda that's actually worked. We have some administrative business for 11 o'clock with Stuart regarding Duchess Fire Department and Rolling Hills Fire Department. So, Stuart, are you with us? I know he's around.
Sorry about that. I had to switch my computers. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, Stuart, we're at item 9.1 on our agenda, so we'll turn it over to you.
All right, perfect. So I think our first item up for discussion here today is additional cost to the new fire truck for Duchess Fire Department, the pumper tender that is going there. As Council is well aware, we had a this year in Patricia's area, and part of it was utilizing all the fire equipment that we had basically within the county of Newell. The one lesson learned from this exercise was the need and the necessity to have things like front-mounted monitors on the front of our fire trucks, as well as ground sweeps. Ground sweeps are devices that basically sprinkle and lay a nice blanket of water across the prairie land and helps cool things down, where our front monitors are a lot like our fire hose nozzles, where we can use copious amounts of water, extreme pressure, and it helps break apart whatever's on fire and of course help cool it down as well. The best part of the front mount monitor is when we're trying to race alongside of a fire, we don't have time to get out and use our hose and walk alongside the fire. Plus, it's dangerous for the firefighters to do that. So we have the ability in our trucks to pump and roll and do that. Now, when I approached Council about this new pumper tender for Duchess that's coming up here, it was meant as a second line truck for Duchess, as a fire engine, as well as a water hauler. That's why it's 3,000 gallons. We didn't specify in our spec things like ground sweeps and monitors. And during our fire chiefs meeting that we had, and in keeping with putting continuity throughout the County of Newell and having a standard service for our fire trucks, we decided that those two devices were very important to have on our trucks to help us efficiently and effectively fight the grass fires. So we approached Fort Garry Industries, who's building our truck for us, and asked them what that cost would be, and to add those two devices to the truck, because there's plumbing issues as well as remote control that would end up in the cab of the truck for them to operate these devices. It would be an additional cost to the project of $23,000. So my recommendation today would be to allow us to have an increase to our budget of $23,000, and the total cost for this project would then be $423,864. And I think one thing to note with this is my original budget when I went out looking for pricing on this truck was $450,000. So it still puts us below the original budget that I had when we were looking for the fire truck. And of course, this would come out of our number 23 capital apparatus replacement function within the county. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any at this time.
Thank you, Stuart. Questions? Clarence?
Well, I go back to the days of cream cans full of water and gunny sacks, and since we've got that type of equipment on our trucks, it's just unbelievable how effective they are, and we definitely need it in where we live with the grass fires. So I'd be happy to make that motion.
Thank you, Clarence. Anne-Marie?
Stuart, so this is on the Duchess truck. What about the other trucks? Because you had, you know, Tilly and Patricia and Jem, and they came all out to the Patricia fire. So would they need that too?
Well, we did make it a part of our normal standard now to put it in there. So as new trucks come in, we definitely will do that. I can tell you that in Patricia, they do have a front mount monitor and ground sweeps on that Timberwolf truck that they have already. So that's good news. The one thing I haven't done, and I apologize because I've been extremely busy, is we have a truck currently being built for Scandia that I can't remember if we spec'd out those things of a front mount monitor and ground sweeps. I do believe we spec'd out the monitor, but I don't know that we put the ground sweeps on there. And I think if that is so, I may want to come back in our October meeting just to ask for a little bit of increase to do that truck. The good news is it won't be near as much of the cost of this $23,000, because this is putting the brand new plumbing from pump to the front of the truck where the plumbing's there already, and they'll be able to just tee off and put the ground sweep monitors onto that truck. So once I've done an evaluation on the tender that we approached for Scandia and awarded, I will make a recommendation from there. But other than that, going forward, any trucks that will come into play, which Rosemary has one in 2 years now in 2023, we will definitely have that as part of the standard for our fire trucks.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve this increase in budget of $23,000 to allow for the ground sweeps and water monitor coming out of our capital project apparatus replacement fund. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move on to the Rolling Hills item.
All right, so my second item here is kind of a two-part thing. There's a change of scope plus an added expense onto this project. The one change of scope is when I met with the engineer to discuss the subject of widening our doors to allow for our fire trucks to better get into the fire halls. The engineer, she had made a recommendation that we had a pad that's actually sitting beside the fire hall right now that's 20 by, it's more than 50 because we have a tarmac in front, but we have a 20 by 50 area where we could put an addition onto that fire hall. And at the end of the day, when we discussed what I wanted to do in the area where currently EID occupies and the fire chief occupies that space, of tearing everything out of there, rebuilding and putting the new stuff in place there, she said it would almost be identical to the cost of just putting an addition on there. So I approached a local builder and asked what that cost would be. And sure enough, it is very, very close, dollars and cents wise. So today I'm asking council for a change in scope so that we could add on to this structure rather than renovate the existing EID fire chief area. And by doing that, we utilize that property a whole lot better because we end up with a new space that's going to have the classroom, fire chiefs, and a mechanical room and maybe a storage room in there. And then the space that we were going to renovate works great for the fire department personnel to do wintertime fire practices. Essentially, there's a whole nother bay that would be sitting right beside there, even if there was expansion that I personally don't ever see happening in my time in the fire service here with the County of Newell. So that was the first portion of my ask here today. The second portion is the County of Newell, I'm going to say Public Works Department. I apologize, Mark. It's much bigger than that. There's a different name for it. But they want to put a fenced-in area for their grader and for their fuel tank. And I think I remember back in November of last year, October of last year, when I approached council, I talked about having an enclosed training area in this area for the firefighters and based it on the need of safety to keep general public away from what they're practicing on, not having to worry about cleaning up the area immediately afterwards and things like that. So if Public Works is putting in an area where they're going to fence it in, gravel it in, and so on, they suggested that maybe it would be a good time for me to ask council that maybe we could just gravel the whole area and then fence the whole area and divide it in half, and half of it would be for the greater shack area, and the other half would be for my fire department training area. The cost for that is $25,000, roughly. That's the budget that Terry Schroeder had shared with me, and I believe we can get everything done that we need to do there for that price. And at the end of the day, we have a great area for the fire department to work on things like vehicle fires, vehicle extrication. You know, if we have the storage shed that we requested, or CCAN, we can do things like ladder exercises. There's a lot of things we can do to utilize in this space and keep it safe within the fire department. So finally, I ask that council approve and recommend that we approve the change to the scope of work with the Rolling Hills Fire Department, and also recommend that we approve the additional cost for the $25,000 to install an enclosed training area on this property. I'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
So just for clarification, Stuart, it's just the scope, the changing, the adjustments to the building are just, they're not costing anything. It's just a change.
That's right. I still am really confident that we're going to stay within that budget of $125,000 that the council agreed to last year, and it's just better utilizing the space that's there.
Perfect. And so then there's the additional $25,000 for the fencing to be done at one time. All right, questions? Thank you. Questions? Okay, a motion? Lionel?
Lionel just with his hand up there.
Make that motion.
Okay, Lionel is making the motion that the recommendation be approved, and that's regarding the change of scope of work and the additional cost of $25,000 to install an enclosed training area next to the county grader. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And Brian, you have a question.
Yes, Stuart, I'm glad you're here today. I received a call from a landowner that was very concerned about us taking the fire restrictions off prior to harvest. Apparently there was some bales being disposed of out in the southeast of Brooks, and there's seed fields that were close by and flax fields that aren't harvested yet. And his concern was that it's a little premature, and we really haven't had the wet weather that would be needed for that. So I'm not here to suggest that is done or not. I promised him I would bring it to your attention. I know that you consult with your fire chiefs in order to put those things on, but I think I echo the concern that, you know, prior to the harvest being done, we certainly don't want another situation you dealt with in Patricia, because that was not only very stressful but also very costly. And keeping a fire restriction on is something that at this time of year I don't think it's a huge disadvantage. But I defer to you and your professionals, your fire chiefs. But I did promise him I would bring it to the attention of council and to yourself.
All right, thank you for that, Councillor DeJohn. Just to give you some insight on kind of why we took the restriction off, we were receiving some phone calls, in particular from landfill sites, about burning in their landfills. And of course, we don't have any exemptions in place for our municipal land sites, landfills. When a restriction's on for everything. And unfortunately, they aren't able to burn, and then they get a huge accumulation. And there's something to be said about when you accumulate too much stuff there, it makes that fire risk even that much greater. So to try and keep things as low as possible, and I guess it could be onto the landfill sites to say, sorry, we're not accepting, wood, garbage, and things like that at this time. But then I think that just opens up a whole nother can of worms. So that's why the question was posed to the fire chiefs, to which all of them were not opposed to switching it down to an advisory. We had some rainfall, and I agree with your statement, Brian, that there wasn't near enough. I believe things are still very, very dry out there, but conditions have gotten cooler. We had for instance, where Tilly got called out to a fire that shared Cypress and County and Newell border again, and that fire was actually very, very slow moving, and it was simply because of the change in weather and temperature and things like that. So we decided that maybe to allow those landfills to burn, we would lift the restriction to an advisory. So that's kind of the biggest reason why we did what we did.
So Stuart, it's possible that if it stays dry like it is, that restrictions may come back on. And our Mill Regional landfill was definitely having a big wiener roast this morning when I drove by.
Yes, they were. As a matter of fact, and I really appreciate Mark Ross, the general there at the Newell Regional. He texted me at I think it was 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning when I'm shutting the fire engines around here for pump testing, and said, hey, we want to burn, but we want to start earlier, so I'm just letting you know. And he sent me a picture of the burn as it was going, to which I shared that with Kevin, because he's the man on call this week in Divisions 5 and 10 here. Kevin was well aware. Mark kept us informed, and I truly appreciate that the landfill does that, so that we know what's going on and how big it truly is. And you're right, he had a pretty big burn going on there this morning. And even though we lifted the restriction, at the time when we lifted it to the advisory, the wind was so great that nobody could burn anyways. So this was his first time to actually get that burn done and out of the way. In answer to your other part of the restriction may come on, it could. if we don't get any significant, if the temperatures stay cool as it is right now and go into winter months where we start to snow, we may just leave that advisory on. But I think we're going to be very, very quick to put that restriction on in the spring before farmers start burning their fields, unfortunately. And I know that won't be a popular choice at that time, but I think it's what we have to do to make sure that we keep the county of Newell as safe as possible.
Thanks, Stuart. So right now it's an advisory that's in place?
That's right. We have an advisory in place, and I'm not willing to go any lower than that and just take everything off. I think having that advisory there certainly gives warning to people to be careful because it is dry out there.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Stuart. We'll let you carry on with your day, and we'll head off to item 9.3, which is our CAO, Matt's item on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Reeve. I wish we weren't in a position to have to give a COVID-19 update. It was sure fun when we could meet in person in council chambers, but here we are in our fourth wave, all kinds of craziness. Alberta has declared a state of public health emergency and implemented new measures to protect the healthcare system, stop the spread, and increase vaccination rates. An update on our response efforts and a recommendation to incentivize/encourage staff to receive their vaccination is provided here today. I think it's important to note that from the outset of the pandemic, the county has ensured safety protocols are assessed and updated to provide maximum protection to our employees, as well as those that we serve. This has come at a significant cost, which I'll touch on a little bit later. Overall, these most recent restrictions really have minor impacts on our ability to deliver our core services at the county, and it's positive to see vaccination rates tripling after the province introduced their version of a vaccine passport recently. Some of the more intrusive measures that we've got: mandatory work from home. Many of our administrative staff are set up really well to work from home. We can forward our phones from our desk to our cell phones at home. So we do have some administrative employees who have been sent home to work from there. Many of our employees are alone throughout the day, grader operators, truck drivers, so there's not a lot of risk there. If you come to the county, the next restriction is masking and the 2-meter physical distancing. That has never been a problem for us. We're very fortunate in this building to have sufficient space to spread out. Encouraging vaccination. So this is the polarizing hot topic in the community, I think, especially in the Newell region. If you look at where our vaccination rates are, we're well below the provincial average, with only 48, just under 49% of people fully vaccinated and 56.4% of people immunized with at least one dose. I pulled those numbers on the 21st. The challenge that we have is we know that COVID-19 is a recognized workplace hazard, and we have a responsibility as an employer to control for that. We have encouraged vaccination. We continue to encourage our employees to be vaccinated because vaccination is considered the most effective control to address and mitigate the risk of transmission in the workplace. If you look across the province, I think we've seen Medicine Hat College, the universities, U of L, I know they're going to have mandatory vaccinations in place, not just for students and staff, but also for any visitors to their facility. As of November 1st, I believe it is, you cannot enter their facility unless you can provide proof of vaccination. There's also the option to provide proof of a negative COVID-19 test result. That's part of the province's new exemption restriction program. But you look at the University of Lethbridge and they're going further than that, right? So they're not accepting that negative test. It comes at a great cost, those tests, and there's a lot of administration behind collecting that data, protecting that data. You collect medical data from your employees, and it puts you into a whole new ball game in terms of your obligation to protect that data and manage it appropriately. So if we look at what our situation is currently at the county, currently all of our employees who are covered by the Employment Standards Code can access up to 3 hours of paid leave to get each dose of a vaccine without fear of penalty, loss of pay, or reprisal. To date, we've had about 16 employees take advantage of that. And I think they've been very responsible in their use of that. They could tap into up to 3 hours, but you know, some people have claimed 15 minutes, others a half hour. So total, we've paid out just over 15 hours of paid leave for our employees to receive their COVID vaccinations. Many employees here, including myself, were vaccinated before this paid leave came out. But we still have a small subset of employees who are not vaccinated yet. So what is left for us to do to encourage vaccination? Is there anything left? I'm kind of of the opinion, if you haven't got your jabs yet, I'm really at a loss as to what is left in our toolbox to encourage vaccination. I've put a couple of options in front of council to consider. I think the message needs to be sent that we do encourage our employees to get vaccinated. I'm recommending that council broaden what those 3 hours of job protected leave can be used for. If you go get the vaccination yourself, if you have dependents and you need some time off during the day to go get your kids vaccinated, by all means, you know, use those hours for that purpose. As well, for anyone who remains unvaccinated, I think we should open up the door for them to use some of those hours to go have a conversation with their trusted medical professional to see if they can resolve any of their concerns. I've also thrown in, for us to understand how many unvaccinated employees we actually have, providing a one-time incentive, whether it's $100, $50, for our employees to voluntarily disclose their vaccination status to HR. Once we kind of know exactly who's left to be vaccinated, we can consider if there's other policy we need to put in place, or if there's other engineered controls that would be sufficient to keep our employees and the people we serve safe, minimizing that risk. But it really needs to be a risk-based approach. And until we know how many of us actually are vaccinated, how many aren't, we're kind of flying blind on that, right? I'm not wild about the idea of having a mandatory vaccination policy, or even like the provincial restriction exemption where you can either show you're vaccinated or do a proof of a negative test. I think the expense of a proof of a negative test and the administration of that is work that I'd prefer not to do. I'd prefer that all of our employees get vaccinated and we're off to the races and don't have to worry about any of these other hurdles to get through. But I also appreciate that there are those situations where vaccinations just aren't a possibility for some people. I told you I'd talk about the cost of COVID-19 to the county, and I think it's really significant. Just about 1,400 hours of staff time have gone into responding to the pandemic. You know, that includes setting up for the clinic that we assisted the city with at the north end of town, cleaning, these conversations that we're having now, staying up to date with all of the releases from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. To date, when I pulled these numbers, we've already spent $136,000 on our response to this. So I'd encourage us all to get vaccinated so we can minimize these impacts to our ratepayers. It comes at a hefty cost. And the 1,400 hours, well, 1,400 hours of responding to this means we weren't responding to things that I think our ratepayers really want us to focus on. So I do have a couple of options there for you to kick around. I'm interested to hear council's consideration, and if we can open the door and encourage our staff to have the conversations with their medical professionals, make it as easy as possible to get out of the office to receive a vaccination, as well as, provide a small incentive for us to figure out how many of us we've really got who are vaccinated there. So I'll open it up to council for questions.
Clarence, Brian?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Matt, you should use whatever you can to encourage your employees, and so that you know what's there, and also for the safety of everyone else. And I don't really even find that it should be necessary for us to make the motion. I think you should just be given a free hand to do what is necessary. They're your employees. And I think it's more than, it's a good move. I don't feel that's something that I have to approve for you to do.
Brian?
I guess my question is going to go a little beyond what we probably perceive as the people that are impact or county employees, and maybe I need to be clear on that. Are our volunteer firefighters considered volunteer or county employees?
They get a check on our payroll at the end of each year. So I think, that's where these questions about developing a policy would come into play. In terms of what I've proposed here in extending the job protected leave, they're not included in that. We could look at including them in the incentive of, providing a small payment for proof of vaccination, so we know what the level of risk is there. I also know we received a memo from Stuart earlier today about Alberta Health Services requirements for first responders to be vaccinated, and I think that is causing some stir there. So I haven't had a chance to respond to Stu there, or read through it in its entirety, but it does look like Alberta Health Services, for any medical first responder, they're expecting the employers to monitor and make sure that the first responders are vaccinated. And it's not just the COVID-19 vaccination that they're requesting there, right? So your tetanus and a number of the other common vaccinations, they're expecting first responders to be in a position where both the first responder and their patient that they respond to is kept safe.
Matt, go ahead, Brian.
Well, thank you for that, Matt. And I guess my own thoughts are along the same lines as Clarence. I wouldn't argue if you decided to go ahead with this. I do struggle with the $100 incentive. I think it's very generous to provide time off with pay to go and get your vaccine shot or go to see the doctor to try to understand whether this is suitable for your particular person. That I support. I really struggle with the $100 per employee. I wouldn't vote against it. I just that's one that is out there that and some of you have heard me say this before. I think for those that are not vaccinated, I'm of a very strong opinion, as you guys all know, that you should be vaccinated. But I think it should be a $100 fine for the ones that don't. But that's a separate issue, and I wouldn't push that.
Anne Marie.
Just for clarification, Matt, you talked about the requirement for a negative test if you decide not to get vaccinated, and that was going to be a lot of paperwork for you. And I'm just wondering if that should not be the cost of the employee. They need to go have that negative test. They need to pay for it, and they need to show you the paperwork only.
Yeah, and that if we're looking at a policy coming into place, you know, those are the conversations we're going to need to have about who does bear the cost. And if it's a matter of just getting us through this next wave and out to the other side, you know, maybe it's not that onerous. But if we're in this for years and we're looking at our responsibility to accommodate employees, you know, we've got that responsibility up to the point of undue hardship. So, you know, these are really the conversations on the policy side of things that I prefer not to have. In terms of that, the incentive for voluntary disclosure, I have put a deadline on that. So I'd like to know internally before next council meeting where we're at for numbers, so we can kind of have the conversation about whether we really need to dig in any deeper on the policy response.
Well, and if I may, Molly, if people make the choice not to get the vaccine, then the consequence of that choice is that you pay for a negative test. To me, that seems obvious, but you know, yeah, you're right. You work on that policy.
And that would be an ongoing cost because the tests are only good at the moment, sort of, are they not? Or for 72 hours, or I forget what it is. Clarence?
Well, that's the exact point. I wonder what the value of a negative test is. You walk out the door and be positive almost, sort of thing. So it's not the answer as far as testing is concerned.
Matt?
Yeah, the negative test, you know, in some of my prior research, I did get an experience from one of our peers in a county up north he had come down with COVID and recovered. So he was outside of the window of where the province would let him go back. But he continued to test negative on those rapid tests for 3 months. So he couldn't come back based on that rapid test policy until he came back clean, right? Even though the provincial requirement said, well, after the 10 days or 14 days from onset, you're good to go. So there can be some unintended consequences of these policies that we're considering.
Wayne?
We have another issue too. I know of people who have had COVID, they haven't been vaccinated, and now they say, why do I need to get vaccinated because I've had COVID? Also, there's the fact that how long do we continue to live with this expense for people who refuse to get vaccinated? We'll have to make it, I guess it'll be the next council, will have to make a decision sometime to say we can't afford to have them doing this stuff forever. We'll have to have a policy, maybe dismissal on people who will not get vaccinated.
Yes, it is there's time comes into the consideration for sure. Anne-Marie?
Newell Housing Foundation just made a policy that new hires have to be vaccinated or they don't even have to apply for a job. And existing employees have until the end of October to hand in proof of 2 shots. And the ones that have medical reasons or absolutely refuse to do it, they have to get the test over and over again at their own cost.
Thanks, Anne-Marie, for that. I'm sure that will become more common in the next few weeks because, yeah, because of this recent wave. Kelly?
Federation Gas Company lawyer just drafted a policy for that provincial organization. And if passed by local gas co-ops, it inflicts the same pain on existing employees as well as new hires, in that they have to show proof of vaccine and or they will be released from their duties. So it's quite intense.
Well, I think so that there's work to go to for people and to be safe, that things like this are going to continue to happen. And it's unfortunate that it's going to be a piecemeal approach, I think, but it's an approach. Wayne?
My gas board, the Bull River Gas, will be making that decision tonight. We're having a board meeting, and that is the number one issue that we're going to be discussing tonight. So next meeting, I'll let you know how it went.
So, Matt, back to, we have a motion here. Just one question on the volunteer fire people. They are not considered like first responders or medical responders, are they? Like you mentioned, some rules that are being put into place.
It's my understanding they are included under that MFR, medical first responders. So I know Stu's going to have a big conversation on his hands to have with his chiefs.
So they are going to be considered in that. Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I could be misspeaking here. I'll have to touch base with Stuart, but that's my understanding is that, yeah, they're included in that.
Okay. Wayne?
I'm still here. Hello, if I could interject. Yes, they are medical first responders, part of the medical first responder program. And if it gets to a point where it is a mandatory thing and we have to do it, the expression from some of the chiefs is we'll just stop doing the medical first responder program and just be firefighters, and that's it. So that's just the opinion of them. Sorry for interjecting. I was just listening to the conversation.
No, I appreciate knowing that.
Molly, another issue I've got, nobody's discussed. What happens if then vaccinated employees all of a sudden say, I don't want to work with these people who aren't vaccinated? What do we do then?
Well, I guess, Matt, we'll deal with that. Again, it comes down to policies, and this is sort of a first discussion, which we all hoped we would never have to have. But there's a public health issue, and our world is not going to, I mean, the words to me, public, involves everyone. Health, it's not political, it's about health. And it's definitely an issue that's interfering with our getting on with business in our world. So, yeah. So are we going to make a motion as recommended by Matt? Brian?
I think Matt has asked for this, and I would support that. So I would be happy to make the motion that follows the option one that he had outlaid.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Going on to item 9.4, the Municipal Internship Program, which we have heard about. And in fact, some of the people that we have employed over the years have been part of this program. Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, so we received a call for applications to the 2022 Municipal Internship Program. We've had great success with this at the county in the past. I know before I arrived, you hosted an administrative intern. We hosted a finance intern. We still have that individual productively working for us at the county. So it's been about 5-6 years since we hosted the finance intern. I kicked this out to our management team, and we did get interest expressed from planning and development. They've been a very, very active and busy department rewriting plans, the land use bylaw. And we think there will be a good opportunity in 22 and 23 to include an intern in some productive work with rewriting our municipal development plan. So there is grant funding. The Municipal Affairs throws $60,000 grant funding towards this. They expect the municipality to pitch in as well. I've proposed that we match those dollars and submit an application for the internship program under the land use planner stream. And if we're successful with our application, we'd have an intern with us beginning in May 2022.
Questions? Wayne and Lionel?
I don't really have a question because I think that's a fantastic program. So I would make the motion, but let's see what Lionel has to say.
Lionel?
Well, I'm going to echo your words, Wayne. I'm always been so impressed by young people, their enthusiasm and their intelligence, and I would strongly be in favor of this. So if Wayne wants to make the motion, or I will.
Okay, we'll let Wayne, seeing as he started off the discussion. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Item 9.5, also Matt.
Thanks again. So back in June, the federal government initiated a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as a way for Canadians to demonstrate their commitment to reconciliation and ensuring that the tragic history and ongoing legacy of residential schools is never forgotten. It would be appropriate for Council to determine how the day will be commemorated at the county. September 30th is the new National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This is one of the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada to honor survivors, their families, and communities, and ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. While this federal statutory holiday currently only applies to federal workplaces, administration recommends Council consider raising awareness of the new holiday by recognizing it as an important day of remembrance for those who have suffered harm and to honor lives lost at residential schools by lowering county flags to half-mast on September 30th. So I've got that recommendation there. We're also open to alternative means if there's any other ideas. I think it's an important day to highlight, and I think the least we can do is lower our flags on that day.
Any other thoughts? Clarence, Wayne?
Certainly in favor of the recognition, as long as it doesn't become a stat holiday. I think we have enough of those already.
Yeah, and I should point out, you know, this holiday has caused some confusion. The federal government put it in place for federally regulated workplaces, so employees who are under the Canada Labour Code, so think bank employees, Canada Border Services Agency. Those individuals will have a paid day off. The province of Alberta has not recognized this day as a statutory holiday. It won't be a paid day off for county employees. The union contract does not include federally regulated holidays as paid days off, and our personnel policy, paid days off are governed by employment standards set by the province, and the province hasn't included that. So in response, no, it's not a paid day off at the county.
Anne-Marie?
We make our own rules, but just for information, what do other municipalities do? Has the City of Brooks made a decision? The villages?
My understanding is the day is not a paid day off at the City of Brooks. I'm not aware what the other municipalities in the region are doing. We do have a list of municipalities in the province, those who have offered the day off paid, and others who haven't. And it's split about 50-50. And the approach some of them have taken is, you know, if they, in some municipalities where they gave Easter Monday as a paid day off, they've now switched that to September 30th as a paid day off. So there was a little bit of give and take there.
All right. Do we have someone who wants to make this motion? No? Wayne? All right. Wayne is moving the motion as written in the request from recommended action to lower the flags. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Just my addition to this would be maybe spend half an hour reading parts of the Truth and Reconciliation Report, which I mentioned before is a interesting and lengthy document. All right. Councillor payment sheets. Nothing new on item 9.6, assessment model changes that I'm aware of. Councillor payment sheets. Oh, Anne-Marie, moving?
Sure.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, Brian?
Well, I guess I was a little confused about the road tour change. I know that some had put it in and some hadn't, and I just assumed that in past years, the road tour that we used to do independently with our staff was done at no charge. So that's why I didn't put it on, but I'm fine with it either way. But that was the question mark that I had. So what was the logic in changing that?
Good question, Brian. And I'm sure the committee knows this is second year, so maybe we started charging last year. I don't know, Clarence or Anne-Marie? Kelly?
The reasoning behind when we had it local was it was your district. We always had the policy what we did in our districts was not chargeable. But now it's kind of a county-wide thing. I guess you can argue either way, but now it's a broader scope. I felt that kind of changed the tone of what a road tour was.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Easier to remember too when it applies just to your division. All right. I think Anne-Marie made a motion to accept the councillor payment sheets. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have a check over $350,000 that we need a motion for payment of. It's I'm thinking possibly final payment for the One Tree overlay. Hubie? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then the payment register for council. I had a question on the first page of 5, the Alberta Health Services charge, which says ambulance leaks. So would that be the day he was involved in that crash? Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. So we received an invoice for the ambulance response.
Okay. Lots of people think ambulances are free, eh? Any other questions on the payment register? Motion to accept. Lionel moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Request for functions of council. No requests. Seeing none. Municipal services business. There's nothing under that. Committee reports, there's a couple that have been included. Just a comment on seeing Joint Services Committee there. The city felt that NRTA, also known now as Brooks RTA, should stay as it is because of the involvement of members who are, like, having it part of joint services, they said would put additional burden on the business people that are on that committee or lay people that are on that committee. So they felt that it should be left alone. But I think there's a recognition of, as the more independent it becomes from funding, hopefully by joint services, then it will probably not involve members of councils like it does at the present time. Tracy or Lionel want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just with that too, also Molly, it was the involvement with the businesses that contribute to the destination marketing fund. And so therefore they felt, because there was those funds to distribute, that it was still something that should stay within our realm.
Okay, anybody have any other committee reports of interest? Kelly?
I just wanted to mention that the fire departments have all met, Bazzano, Rosemary, and Duchess in that order. And they've been very busy due to the dry summer. It's interesting being on all 3 departments. I don't know if it's totally beneficial or not, because sometimes I ask some questions that may or may not be appreciated, I guess, but it's been received, and the budgets have been approved, and I'm sure that Stuart will be forwarding those to finance for inclusion in our next budget discussion. Are there any questions that anybody has about our 3 intermunicipal fire departments? Okay.
Are they quite different, Kelly, from one another, or are you trying to point out the differences or the similarities?
I think mostly similarities. We're just, from my perspective, I like to see them operating similarly, and I think that's part of my job, to be there as a, hearing the similar things. And the one thing that I could comment on is that 50% of each of those 3 departments responding to calls is medical calls. So in a department with 66 calls, which is one department that I'm thinking of right now, 33 of those are to help carry the stretcher into the ambulance. So that's quite significant. I got to tell you, some firemen live and breathe for that purpose, and they appreciate the calls, and others don't appreciate it quite so much, but they have the choice whether to respond to the calls or not. So that's where we're at. And the fire chiefs have the discussions with the volunteer fire department members as to what their likes and dislikes are. Numbers of volunteers, we have 20 in Rosemary, 20 of which 2 are RNs, by the way, which is a real bonus to that department. In Duchess, there are 20 volunteers, and in Bassano, we're at 15.
Kelly, are those RNs aren't the same ones that respond in JAM?
I would not think so, Molly. I think there might be more in different ones in JAM.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Anne-Marie?
Kelly, you mentioned budgets. You're getting all the financial information you need to approve the budget?
We are getting the information as requested. The reports are from 2 departments are still created documents, and at one meeting there was an error because of the cut and paste thing, but it was quickly explained and quickly fixed. It's the way it's going to be. I mean, the information that we get, you know, you just wonder, you know, you look for the mistakes. At least I do. I mean, what else can I do?
Yes, well, you keep looking, Kelly, and thank you for that. Thank you for that diligence and support for those fire departments.
It's a pleasure, and the thank you goes to those volunteers that operate that service within our municipalities. We're very fortunate. Yeah.
And it's interesting when you make mention of the medical calls and how many are, which is quite surprising, 53% of that statistic. And I guess maybe the farther you are away from an ambulance, the more you would begin to appreciate if you knew somebody coming to your house would be faster than the ambulance, and that person just might have a bit of medical background better than I would in my particular, situation, for sure, is a reassuring, especially if they've been double vaccinated too. Brian.
And if I could just respond to that, Molly, you make a really good point. Even include the men in that feeling, they're attending to something that is out of their wheelhouse in a lot of cases, right? So when they have personnel on the department that can provide that care, that's where the support goes, or that's where they use that expertise to the max, right? In the Rosemary area, for example, or Duchess. The other thing that we're really talking about at all three meetings was the length of time that it's that we're waiting for ambulances. Ambulances are not being housed or stationary in the ambulance bays very much anymore. So we, as long as 45 minutes is the wait. And so our volunteers are sitting there holding a hand, basically waiting for ambulance to arrive. And so Stuart is doing some work and some fact finding to bring to council. I thought it was going to be for this meeting, but I didn't see anything, so watch for it at the next meeting. There is concern about where these ambulances are coming from to respond to the calls.
Yeah, and that wasn't what I was referencing. It was the distance some of us are from an ambulance. 45 minutes sounds really good to me. But it depends where you are for that time lag, definitely. Brian?
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you, Kelly, because, you know, being on the committee with you, and you bringing the perspective from the others is, I think, very valuable, and it adds that level of consistency to the whole planning process. There's not, you remind us when there's one-offs that we aren't aware of, like a guy like me that's not a firefighter and doesn't sit on another department's budgeting type thing. We don't know those things. So having that consistency, I hope whoever sits on council brings that forward, because I think it's a valuable tool for the next council in their organizational meeting, whoever is there, that they're reminded that is a component that actually is very valuable. That at least I find it very valuable.
Absolutely. I totally support that appreciation, and it's just a good way to finally figure out how we should perhaps have the same person on that committee, those committees, for some standardization. All right. That sort of takes us to the end of our meeting, and I just have an information question. I was curious and asked Lane today when the councillors who will not be returning, when their duties are officially over. And so September 28th is the organizational day, correct?
October 28th.
I mean, October 28th. Yes. October 28th. Thank you, Lane. The election isn't until the 20th. And so the 28th is the organizational meeting. And so that's when the group of us that are leaving will be done for sure. Just so you don't get any quick ideas that your responsibilities will end immediately after the 20th. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, and that is funny because I had in the last 2 days, a sewage problem in Patricia and some signs came down. But I have one more point with the strategic priorities chart. I noticed that for Lane, to equalize the numbers in each division is no longer on there. Did we give up on that, or should that be put back on?
Well, I guess that is something that direction will be provided by the next council. Don't know what else to suggest in that regard.
No, I just assumed it was on there, and since it's not solved, that it should just stay on there.
Good.
Thank you for that, Anne-Marie, and thank you, Lane. Anything else on our Hubie?
This is for Mark, if he's still listening. Railway crossing standards. Who do you speak to about those things when you want to get these crossings fixed? Because there's a number of them on secondary highways. So that would involve Alberta Transportation and CP Rail, correct? Maybe Mark's not there.
Actually just stepped into council chambers for a sec. If you hold on a second, I'll go grab him and tell him you have a question.
Okay.
He's probably might have heard it if he's in council chambers, just doesn't know how to respond.
I heard half of it. One moment, please.
The, yeah. Ariana, if you're there, who all are in council chambers today as observers?
She was quickly trying to chase Mark there. I believe we've got Dave and Barb Stabler in there, Nick Solanka and Adina Scandra with us today.
Late to the party, but I understand there's a question for me.
Yes, Mark. Municipal services on the railway crossing standards. Some of them are rough out there. I guess you have to talk to Alberta Transportation and CP Rail, but I think they're okay, but it's just those ones are rough. So have you had to deal with that at all?
You're saying just the provincial crossings are rough?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can make a phone call to the province. We've had to do that in the past to try to help that process along, I guess I'll say. Generally, it's not a responsibility whatsoever, but we do find ourselves trying to support our ratepayers' concerns moving forward with Alberta Transportation, so I can do that. Do you have specifics?
It's just the one south side of Tilly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're muted, Molly.
Thank you. Lionel?
Mark, while you're still there, I came into Brooks off of 15.5 the other day, off the pavement, and turning left on the highway. That, you know, we never did get a merge lane, and that I think would be something to keep on our radar. It seemed to me that it would be very handy to have a merge lane there, if that's a possibility. Other than we have to deal with the federal government on that one.
May I ask for clarification on that one? Was that southbound turning east, or was that northbound turning east?
Southbound turning east.
Okay, so just to remind council that I believe when we looked at that, I think that was just about $1 million touch when we were in that discussion when we upgraded 15.5 between Rosemary and the 550. But I can definitely have that on my radar for the future.
Yeah, it's next council has to worry about the million. We don't.
All right. Anything else? All right, we will adjourn our council meeting. And Mr. Amulung, official time would be, or Anne-Marie, or 12:05. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Molly.